Welcome to another Good Dads podcast. I am Jay Fotsch for The Intentional Dad. We are alongside Jason, and we will introduce our guest here, David Anderson, momentarily. But real quick, before we get started, tell us just a brief background and remind everyone about The Intentional Dad. Like, what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so The Intentional Dad is just, I think what we're trying to have a conversation around is around those dads that are taking intentional steps. We kind of shared last month about that whole conversation around the, like, what are you doing? Well, the fact that you want to be intentional, probably you're doing good stuff.
Yeah.
And we're going to hear from one.
Right. And not just talking about it.
Right.
The action portion is
That's
very
right.
important part of The Intentional Dad. So we welcome in David Anderson.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being
thanks
here.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it.
It's a little surreal to be here. I listen to you, Jay, on the morning to work every single day. Yeah. I've seen you hosting big events. You're at Cardinal Stadium. I see all the plays. You're like the Ryan Seacrest of Springfield, Missouri. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I hope this isn't disappointing then.
You just got Ryan Seacrest.
Wow.
I mean, really.
I'm like the great value Ryan Seacrest. He's a beautiful man. I'm just the Springfield version. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself here, David. We know you're a father of three. So what else do you do?
I'm a school counselor. I've been in Willard Public Schools for, this is year 23, I believe. 16 of those as a counselor and a bunch more as a special ed teacher. But yeah, I've got a great job. I got a great family. My wife, she's awesome. So yeah.
And you were also one of the 2024 Dads of the Year.
Yeah, like I said, my wife is pretty special, and she submitted an essay, I think, or some kind of application for me, and she probably made me look way better than I really am. Somehow I got selected, and so here we go.
That's awesome.
We have some of those questions from like this application about people talking.
We're gonna go over them.
We're gonna go. No,
we're gonna make sure he's doing everything that was on the application.
Fact check.
Two truths and a lie. Yeah, let's go.
That's right. It's getting real. It's real dads, real lives. Today.
So for The Intentional Dad today, we're kind of instilling kindness, responsibility, and teamwork. So kind of what you were saying, Jason, a little bit, but kind of honing in some specific areas. And if you want to share kind of what that means to you, and then we'll kind of talk to David about it as well.
Yeah, I think what's great about your story, even as a school counselor and different things, like, what are you doing to step into that? Because we've got to coach that. I think sometimes we got to have conversations around those. And I think in my house, we're constantly having these conversations. Hey, okay, what was that kind? Was that, did you get your chores done? We're part of this family unit, and keep going back to that. And I think, we're excited to hear kind of how you're shaping that,
Sure.
But even in a school system, I think that's a whole nother framework, because I think sometimes people don't have the intentional dads, or like you might be co-parenting in different locations and stuff. So it creates a kind of this whole other dynamic that you might be able to help speak into.
Well, when I met my wife and we got married, before we had kids, we wanted to do a few things before we settled down. And one of those things was to join the Peace Corps. And so her and I joined as a married couple. We lived in Honduras for 2 years, working built water systems, and she worked in the health sector. And when you live in a third world country like that for a little while, I think you're overwhelmed with just how blessed you are, and kind of a sense of making sure you spread that and give that back. And so when we got back, we left our stay there a little short because we were having our first child, Dale, and when we got back, that was one thing we wanted to instill, the fact that servitude has to be a part of our family. And so it's a goal of mine to take every one of my kids on a mission trip overseas before they graduate. So I've gotten 2 of those done. I took Dale to Mexico, Pueblo, Mexico a few years ago. And I just got back from El Salvador with my middle kid, Jack, this past summer. So
that's amazing.
And that's something like we can talk about it, right? And everybody says, hey, we should be very fortunate what we have in this country. But how important is that to actually see it, to experience it?
Oh, I mean, when you're in a different culture that's completely not your own, I think that it kind of strips away. You almost feel a little guilty, to be honest with you. You feel kind of guilty for the things that you got. And, to be honest with you, I think so many people are chasing such big things like a house or a car. And so that kind of strips all that away. And even though there was a lot of poverty where we're at, the fact that they were still some of the happiest people we've seen. It didn't make a difference that they didn't have, Our house was made out of mud. They still were very, happy family.
And that kind of goes back to gratitude.
Right.
We talk about that a lot, Jason, and just kind of just simplifying your everyday life and just think about everything you're grateful for and start the easiest thing on the list.
That's right.
Waking up in the morning, having a family, and just build from there. Or it doesn't even have to go any further from that.
Yeah. Shapes your priorities for sure. That's where it kind of gets into like what's really important in this life. And I think that kind of helps you out with that.
There was a time we were in Jamaica and Dominican. It was the same thing. We like to talk to the workers and try to understand their culture as much as possible. And like some of those, they work for 14 days in a row and they're away from their family for 2 weeks, but they're providing for their family and they're working 12 to 14 hour days.
It's crazy.
And they're in there singing.
Yeah.
They're cleaning constantly, like 12 to 14 hour days. There's no breaks, and they're singing, and they're some of the happiest people because they get to do that. They have an opportunity to provide for their family.
A lot of those cultures, family is the most important thing. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
When they've got that and they're working with each other and, they got things figured out.
Very inspiring.
Let me ask this question. Yeah. So when I think about being intentional, like that's just you're saying, hey, we got to get these kids to this experience. So talk about how you're down, like when you're down there and you're having this and you're talking about kindness and you're talking about responsibility, almost like more of a global sense of responsibility. Like if I've been so fortunate, why wouldn't I at least have a conversation around that? Like what were your kids saying to you when you're on these trips? How's that playing out?
I think, be able to watch them kind of, acclimate to kids at their own age, to see kids for the first time, they're the minority for once. I think that kind of flips the script a little bit for them. And what's great is not only the part when they're there, the conversations we have there and asking questions and trying to figure things out, but also when they get back and kind of seeing how their lives have changed, seeing the humility they have then and watching how their heart kind of turns into more of a servant heart. And that you can see the things they do at school and things they do in the community. So, yeah.
So you're seeing the transformation because you're willing to be intentional with this trip, and they're reaping the benefits of those things.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
This Good Dads podcast is brought to you in part by our generous supporters. This week, we'd like to thank the following: Prime Inc., ESC Consulting, Dr. and Mrs. Benji and Lori Lambert, Pinnacle Consulting, CPAs, Mercy Hospital. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Visit our website at gooddads.com to learn how to contribute to the Good Dads mission. So to kind of rewind to what you were saying before you had kids, you and your wife, and you wanted to, join the Peace Corps, how, just tell us, and maybe you can add to this too, Jason, how important is that as you as a dad to lead by example? Like, even just doing that to make sure that if you're trying to instill something in your kids or even your school kids, how important is that to actually do the action so they can see it?
I think it's the most important thing because I think they get a little tired of you preaching at them all the time. They get a little preachy. It kind of you start losing ears.
You need to do this.
Yeah.
You need to do that.
Right. And I think that, being able to just let the body work for itself, the way you treat your wife, the way you interact with her and the respect that you give her, you want that to kind of influence how they respect women and their mother and their future wives too and spouses. Yeah.
And that's an important role for you too. I didn't know if you want to kind of piggyback on that, Jason.
I think you said it very beautifully. Like, I think they don't always hear what you say, but they watch what you do. Right. Kids, they're very receptive. And I think that's kind of this, like I think about this conversation around you being a school counselor and even working in special ed and all those things. Like, Willard's not like a giant school district, so you probably wear a lot of hats. And like, how do you, how are you showing that at school, not just at home? What are some things?
Well, it's crazy when you go to school to become a counselor, they teach you a lot of different techniques and different ways to work with kids and to, be able to get down to root issues and things. And then when you're actually in the school setting working with some of these kids, I think people are surprised at some of the issues. I'm in elementary school and I'm young kids, and you wouldn't think that those kids are dealing with, such heavy issues, but you'd be surprised at how many of these kids have, are witnessing domestic violence or seeing these crazy things in their homes and trying to process all this. But I've had situations where you almost have to like kind of scrap some of those theories a little bit, some of those techniques you've learned, and just kind of go with your gut somewhat. We've had some kids lose their father. And so I've had one kid in particular, I spent a better part of a year, 20 minutes a week, putting together a model car with him, and then I've had other kids where we just carve out some time to go to the gymnasium and shoot baskets for a little bit and talk. I've got I got 20, 30 Lego sets in my office, and we just kind of put those.
Those are expensive.
They're very pricey. They're not cheap. You're exactly right. I'm getting a pretty good budget, so that helps out. But you're right. Yeah.
I really need to develop the great value version of Legos. I think there might be one out there.
Generics, but not too much cheaper.
Right. And then like your kids know it. So then you're not being an intentional dad. Okay.
I don't want these.
Yeah, they know that.
So basically what you're saying is just time. Just spending time with some kids.
Yeah.
You just to listen.
Need some approval. Needs a little attention. Yeah, for sure.
And that's a really nice step, because I even think like what you're saying with, like I think people could listen and then could say, oh my gosh, like I can't take a mission trip. Like, what is that? I don't even understand how I would do that. What would I do? But I think it could be small things, right? It could be just like there was kind of this theme at one point, I think during COVID and stuff, we were all drive through, and it was like, pay for the person behind you.
Oh yeah.
It might be like, hey, how much is that bill first?
Yeah.
Just to be, but like that would show you're showing kindness, and like, we're going to throw that on there. Maybe it's just a coffee in the morning through a drive-through somewhere.
We do it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But like I think that's a small step, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be these. I think sometimes we just think, well, I could never do that, but it can be small things, right?
That's what I tell, we do a lesson every single year. It's the one lesson that I teach to every single grade level, every single year. And we call it bucket filling. The premise of it is that, everybody carries around a bucket, and when your bucket's full, you feel great. When your bucket's empty, you feel awful. And, what are you doing to fill somebody else's bucket? And I always tell kids, if you're only filling buckets when you're doing these big, grandiose, gigantic things, you're never going to be good at this. This is not going to be your thing. It's about the day-to-day, every single thing, the small stuff you do that adds up, that makes an impact in people's buckets.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
But yeah. I've learned that from our 6-year-old.
Oh, wow.
If I will say something or do something nice, and she'll say, you just filled my bucket.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, I don't know what that means, but now I do.
It's a great book.
Like, I didn't even, is there a leak in the house? Why do we need buckets? What's happening? Do I need to be worried? Do we need to fix a faucet around here?
Right,
I'm always worried as a dad. I need to fix a problem or something.
It's true.
That's
true. That's good.
All right, let's talk a little bit about responsibility and teamwork then, the portion of this intentional dad, and how do you come across that? I guess we can start in your house, and then obviously at school as well, like what you've worked. Well,
in the house, I think people do this all kinds of different ways. I think chores are a simple way people to do that as far as teaching responsibility. I really think that's one of the best reasons to put your kids in some sports and activities outside of the home. I'm a big believer in that you reap what you sow, and having kids without me having to do it myself, see the rewards of I put in this work, I dedicated myself to this, and now I'm getting some benefits too. And it doesn't always work out. There's failures, and I think that the failures are as equal of value as the successes are too. So, yeah,
I think it'd be fun to hear a story. Right? Is there a story you have
about teamwork?
There? Yeah, or something like we're just. Maybe it's with your kids or something.
And this might go back to that nomination.
How about,
that's right.
Obviously, your wife nominated you. Was it on this portion of teamwork?
This is the story I was going to tell. That's probably going to get me off the list.
Those are the real ones. It's like
those are the ones we want.
I said that last episode. I was like, remember, hey, I was throwing my kids' clothes down the hallway or something.
This is not a podcast necessarily about we're doing everything right.
Right.
Sometimes you can learn from mistakes.
That's right. So now we're all lean in, friends, lean in.
If you're Willard School District, please turn off the podcast. All right. No. So I've got two boys. I got 17, 18 years old. They're 11 months apart. And so when they were young, I thought, the best way to get these kids to bring out the best of each other is to I would bring out these little competitions all the time. Like, who's going to do this or this? And did it make them better, in their particular sport they were working on? Absolutely. Did it make them love each other very well, work together as a team very well? Absolutely not. And so it was, we're talking about
it was cutthroat.
epic battles.
Brother rival, man.
Oh my gosh, it was awful. And I feel like I orchestrated all of that.
Okay.
That was the problem. It's like looking back on, I was like, if I could change something, I probably wouldn't do that as much.
So what were some of those? Tell a story about like what was the challenge maybe that you did?
Oh,
was it
gosh.
against chores or getting stuff done or pajamas on time?
It's always dishes.
Okay.
Dishes is the thing. So we have a cycle of who empties the dishwasher, who loads it, who put, that kind of thing. And so anything they can do to get out of that, so we put that at stake all the time. And this particular one, I think we were, I have a batting cage in my backyard. So we're out there constantly. And
awesome.
I think the contest was, we had this little point system as far as we hit the ball. And bottom line, it did not end up well for the older brother. And
oh gosh.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
A junior,
little
junior's
brother.
got it,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this
Stepping
is
up his
probably
game.
when they were like 8 or 9. So this has been a long time ago. But needless to say, I had to step in to get the physicalness away. So, but I hate doing that. But anyway, they're probably not happy I shared that story.
Okay. So how do we do teamwork then? Like, I mean, like that's a perfect example. So how do we learn from that? And then what's a better way to do teamwork as we look at more of the intentional dad?
That's a great question. Do you want to jump in on that?
And it could maybe not even with your
Yeah.
sons. It could be at work or teamwork with anyone. I mean, it could be even with your spouse.
Oh man. Well, I think that's part of it too. It's like as a unit, like everyone has a job. I think as far as building a team is everybody has a task. Yeah. And our school teaches us a lot too. We're a big 7 habits kind of school. And so we believe that everyone has a genius. And so everybody has those areas that they're specialized in. So kind of harnessing everybody's talents for one cause is the way to go. Just like our family, like, I respect these families that have like one parent because I couldn't do both those roles very well. Like I could try, but I'm not going to be as good as I could be. But yeah, having them see the dynamic of how our family works, the way she takes care of some things, the way I take care of other things a little better. And we play off that and kind of build a family that works. So,
Yeah. That's a great point. I think one of the things I always see is like with the sports analogies, those always seem to be really easy, but then as a family unit that it like loses it because you have these brother rivalries, you've got these other sibling things. And so there are challenges in there, but it's almost like, hey, I've had that conversation with one of my kids, like, hey, I need you to unload the dishes. Right. And if you unload the dishes, then my job might be to load them. And then we teach all of our kids at like 8 or 9 to do their own laundry.
That's what we
just
do.
as a part.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. So I think even in that, it's like, you got to do your part. But then if somebody's loads in there, like just move that over. Right. You don't have to yell in the whole house and throw a fit. Oh, Leland, get your stuff. I'm picking on her, but
Yeah, because I wonder how that would work in marriage.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How would that work if it
I
was
feel
just
like there's a whole nother podcast. where
hey,
like,
hey, honey, you just did not do your end of the stick, so I don't know if I can pick up your half today.
yeah, that is funny because I've had that conversation with my wife, you feel like everyone always feels, even as an employee, as an employer, all these other dynamics. Well, I'm doing more than you. I mean, it feels that way in a team.
Yeah.
Right. So have you coached some teams where you've seen that dynamic?
Well, the teams I've coached have been my kids' teams in younger sports. But yeah, you see that a lot. You see kids situations just like that for sure.
It's like, I'm the best player, so I don't have to show up. Or like you see that in the NFL teams, like they don't report for training camp and they're like, wait, what? You some prima donna? Like there's tension in this story.
So having a little humility is being a team player.
I think so.
Of everything. Like you just kind of do it. You pick it up where it needs to be picked up because you love that other person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I think you started that with the humility piece. And I think like maybe all of these work together. Maybe there's a reason behind all of these, but I think like you started with that humility of like, hey, I'm in this other country. Like now I'm aware, man, I am so fortunate, right? Or so blessed. I have all these things. And then like adding that, like this level of humility goes to kindness, goes to like seeing yourself in responsibility, seeing yourself as a role in a team. Like, are you seeing that like more with your kids as they get older? Because I think that's the tension, right? Little kids are different.
not when they're fighting in the batting cages.
Right. Not when they're fighting.
That is the time that it's not.
Yeah, they're not doing that. No humility there. But like, what are you seeing? Even with that dynamic, I think having a girl and 2 boys and like, there is differences in the sexes and stuff, the battle.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see like my oldest son, he does a good job. He would go to my grandma. She's still alive. She's 93. And so he would go and do puzzles with her in the evening times. And so seeing things like that, even like our church will do neighborhood cleanup days over here, kind of in the Tom Walk. We get a freshwater church on Northwest Fast Springfield, and we'll have neighborhood cleanup days and see the kids jump in and be able to pitch in and kind of help out. So you kind of see that kind of transferring over to the kind of people they're going to be in the future. Yeah.
Man, that's cool.
Very good.
You get to see them growing and evolving.
Absolutely.
As a person, yeah.
So, do you, David, Jason, do you guys have anything else that we missed on instilling kindness, responsibility, and teamwork as we kind of wrap up the Intentional Dad today?
I don't know if I do.
Yeah.
I think David was excellent. For you watching at home, applauding your cars, whatever. I think that's a good concept. I think all those pieces of, step into the fray, take chances, do the things, be involved, like coaching little teams, doing this and being involved and engaged. I think that intentional father piece is there. And you were telling stories with that. And I think that's going back and sharing those concepts of how you've made a difference because you've just said, hey, this is what we're going to do. And you're just going to keep going through those. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Any final words of wisdom for the listeners?
I'm ready.
You ready for some final words?
I need something.
Oh man, pick a good wife. That's like that makes all the difference, man.
That's right. Pick a good
Be a
wife.
teammate.
I got a great one. She's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate it. David Anderson from Willard. And of course, Jason, as always, we appreciate you for another episode of The Intentional Dad. Thank you.